And this is the original record blue. It is called something else. It's called Roundel Blue, but I decided to not paint it in the same color because I was born in the Soviet Union and machinery was like kind of gray colored there. There was that special Soviet gray color for all of the machinery. And so it's gray. It's actually called wild thyme. Some kind of thyme. It's like a beautiful gray. I call it the Soviet gray. Pink. So this is a record, what's called record number 3. They all go in sizes, which roughly match the width of the jaws in inches. This one should obviously be 3 inches. And if I knew what an inch is, I'd tell if it is 3 inches or not. I have no idea. People tend to leave a lot of parts polished, like they polish these sides up and then they kind of leave them unpainted. But to me it defies the purpose of painting a vise. Because we live in England and it's so humid here, everything gets rusty over time. So I thought the more I paint, the larger the surface area that I paint, the better. There's a lot of coating here. So this particular vise has got 3 layers of paint. There's 2 layers of base paint, which is like light gray, you can see here. And 2 more layers of gray. And you need 2 layers of gray because otherwise you can see there's bits there which you can almost see through if you haven't painted them twice. So this bit is normally polished, but I've noticed that you only need 2 slides on the sides. So I painted the middle as well. Where do I pull it so it's nice and pretty? Kind of, when you remove this tape, you don't want to leave it too long, because when the paint really sets, then it will start cracking on the sides, and the edge that you create when you're pulling the tape off, that edge would be much rougher. It will literally be serrated. But if you remove the tape, like next day, you're good. Look at that. Just look at that. Oh, you can see the markings. So I measured, this will slide inside the stationary jaw, and I measured the width of these rails. You can see some markings left there. Well, oh well. It's kind of strange. I do like woodworking. I really like woodworking. But in some ways, I remember I heard for the first time when people say, oh, you know, you sort of start with woodworking, you graduate into metalworking. I mean, obviously, restoring a vice wasn't a lot of metal work. But there was some, and it couldn't be any more different from woodwork. It literally couldn't be any more different. Okay, now this is done. Now the rails. There is so much paint in there. I feel like I either need to bake it or I need to leave it for weeks to really set. Because it's not really, I mean, you can scratch it so easily right now. So record number 3 is a very popular vice. It's kind of, I think they date back to sort of late 40s, very late 40s, early 50s to 70s. This is one of the later ones. And you can tell by looking at the record branding itself. So on the older vice, it's sort of just all indented and it's just the word record. But on a newer vice, you see it's sort of, it's like, it's a protruding sign, more like a cast iron sign. It's one of the later vices. I don't know if they're any better or worse than the early ones. I feel like they're all the same. Like the casting is more or less the same. It's fairly well made, all of this stuff. The craziest thing is, so I started restoring vice with them. This is the first record I restored. It was this number 1. Let me show it to you. So this was the first record I restored. And you can see, actually, speaking of dating it, this says record in an indentation. And the newer one is a protrusion. But anyway, so to restore this, I needed a larger vice. And so I got like a new Draper or some kind of brand like that. I think they're like 50 quid new. And they work. Like, obviously we've moved ahead as far as machining is concerned. So the parts that need to be machined were machined well, and the surfaces were parallel and everything was fine. But like these bits that I've covered, right, that's the important part, because this is where the articulated jaw is sliding against the fixed jaw. So in the new vice, that is all like machined well. So it's sliding fine, nothing rattles. But the rest of the casting is just so bad, like they don't give a shit. And you can argue that it doesn't matter, right? It doesn't matter if there's poor casting here and poor craftsmanship there, and there's like, you know, you can feel that it's made of two sides that don't quite correspond to each other. But it's just like not enjoyable. It's not enjoyable to work with that vice. So that made me want to buy this record number 3 because it's large. So I thought, okay, I'll have one large vice. And I actually bought 2. So I restored one, and it kind of had a hard life. The guy who owned it was an ex-RAF engineer, and at home he used to make some kind of custom motorbike parts. And so the vice was very heavily used. And the worst thing is that he used to whack the handle with a hammer to kind of like, probably he used the vice as a press. Maybe as he was getting older, to sort of clamp the part better, he'd whack the spindle with a hammer, and it completely destroyed the spindle. It just doesn't look good. And it's strange, like you can't buy the spindles anymore. They're too expensive to rebuild. So it's cheaper to buy another vice. So I got this other record. They're the same. I painted them the same color. I'll sell one of them. I'm not sure that this grey is as popular with other Brits as it is with me. Oh yeah, look at this. Look at this. The other problem with leaving this tape for too long is it starts to really bind, and sometimes you have to remove the glue. We're good here. We're good. Okay, the slides. And the upper rails. Let's look at this. Ah, so much paint. I'm not sure like what's the advantage of having a thick layer of paint, as long as you don't paint it in one go. If you put a few layers on, you're probably better off having more paint than less in terms of thickness of the coating. Because if you're machining something and like your file slides across the device, I think having more paint will provide an equally more protection. But if you do try and paint it in one go, it will just be droopy and there'll be drips of paint everywhere. So look, that is what we grease, and these are the rails that the articulated jaw will slide against. So I'm super happy with that. It's all very nicely done. You can see that I've painted them on the inside completely, including the base coating. So there's no corners cut on this one. Absolutely no corners cut on this one. Yeah, and number 3 is a popular vice. They've put them at schools, they've put them in colleges. They learned a lot of making with this vice. It's probably by far the most popular record vice you can buy. It's in size number 3. Okay, this is the rear nut. It's from the other vice. You see that there's better drilling. So this is better centered than the other one. And I'm kind of tempted to use the nut from the other vice and build one good vice, and the vice that's got hammer marks on the spindle, I think we'll just go for less money. But this one will be no expense spared. Okay. This is for the pin. I'll show you. So this is the pin that locks the nut. Oh yeah. Ta-dum. Okay. So the nut would slide. Oh, look at that. We forgot this. Yuck. It's not quite dry at the bottom. We forgot this. I shouldn't be doing it with a Leatherman, really. I should use the blade. I like using my leather. It's a great tool. This was like an impulse purchase. I was at work. I was kind of browsing Amazon, doing my office job at the time. And I just got it. And I had it ever since. It's been like over 10 years and I love it. I use it so much. Okay. So we're good. Now the nuts will slide in like so. Perfect. Okay, and then it slides all the way through. And then we're using the pin. Where's the pin? And that's the pin is going to go in there to lock the nuts in place. There's no tension on the pin because the tension is going to go that way, so the nut will rest against. There's like this casting inside against which the nut will rest, and it's in there. Okay, but to properly build it, we would need actually we would need to put the jaws in place. Let's do that. Excuse the creaking chairs. IKEA's finest. Right. I think we're good. This is kind of mostly to clean my own fingers after I lubricate this. But we'll do it justice, we will do it justice. Yeah. Okay. So we need to figure out which one is the front, which one is the rear. The holes are sort of centered towards the bottom, like so. Okay. I think generally the front jaw is the one with more markings, so that's the front jaw. So what, are we doing it? Are we like doing it? Are we doing it? Okay. So if we're doing it, just a little bit of grease. That's a tricky one. You don't want to over grease things. I'm a big fan of watchmaking, and I do watch a guy who rebuilds watches on YouTube, and I really dig his idea that you shouldn't over lubricate things, because then it just sort of gums up. So you don't want to put too much grease on, because if you like put a pile of grease on this, all that the slide is going to do is going to push it aside. You will never actually use it. So that sort of ball of grease around parts, it's not actually taking part in work. So you're not any better off with that. Okay, let's grease this up, because we don't want this to rust. So you cannot paint this bit, because you want the surfaces to be really in line, really in line. And also if you really clamp on something, paint is going to basically crack at some point. But mostly it's because you want jaws to be completely in line. Okay. And the jaw itself. Just a thin layer of grease, but it needs to be grease. People who use thin oils here, this is a total, oops, it's a total mistake. It's the upper part, we don't want to grease that. So we don't want to grease any part that faces you, the operator, but other parts, so the one that's facing down, we do want to grease. Yeah, so everything that's not moving fast and just sits there, and you need to grease it, that needs to be like thick, consistent grease. That's that. Okay. Yeah, people who use thin oils there, no, that's a mistake. Thin oils do dry, and they will dry. Perfect. This is perfect. Oh, now the big dilemma. The big dilemma is which screws to use. So I've got original screws from it. So we've got, so these are the new screws I bought, and I had to machine them. But I've also got original screws. Okay, that's one of the original screws. The slots. That's a new screw, and that's a new screw. So the new screws are Phillips head, and the old screws are slots. I really can't decide which ones to use. I do like new screws. I mean, it's just better. But I also like the originals, and the originals are really good at it. They're not really damaged at all. They can go right back in, but they rust. But they rust, and I'm not sure. Okay, let's see. So we found 4 better screws, and then we'll make a decision. Oops, right. We've got screws. Let's find a flat screwdriver just in case. We'll have a flat screwdriver, we have just in case we'll have this. It should fit that. Perfect. Okay, so we're tooled up. Let's then see. So if I use flathead slotted screws, you go right in and you really, this goes quite deep. But with the new screws, I had to machine the shit out of them to make them sit in. I don't think there's enough left in them for the bit to go in. If they get stuck, then I think we can actually strip them. And I absolutely hate Allen key screws, or what you call them, hex screws, because it's easiest to strip these. Like, I don't know, like even a Phillips screwdriver is a better option than an Allen key. I don't understand why this sort of 6-lobe system is so easy to but also, like, look, these are these Chinese screws you can buy. Look at how tiny the actual Allen part is. It could have been twice the size. So I don't know, like, this is what 4, that's a 4 mil. It could have been at least 5 or 6, right? It could have been a 6 mil Allen key, which would mean it would be much harder to strip it. We have this massive screw, and you have this tiny Allen key for it. So some part of me wants to use the original screws. Look at this, that's perfect. So if I use the originals, oh, look at that. Just look at that. But you know what, let's use the Allen key screws, because they're stainless. So, the originals go back. I didn't spend like 10 hours of time rebuilding this to use old screws. And I had to machine these, so I had to cut them. You can see that these have been heated up. That's because I was grinding quite large chunks of it. Okay, so lube. Is it too long? That's the question. Let's see. Could be too long because I ordered 1 inch long, and I hope they don't need to be cut. Ooh, what's that? Perfect. It does sit in, it's just not deep enough for my liking. It should be deeper, but then nah. No, it is what it is. I'm not going to really use this vise for any meaningful work. Nowhere near what it was designed for. Ah, come on, I chased the thread. I had to buy a tap, and it's all imperial. It's all these old British sizes. Everything's weird. Whoa. Perfect, look at that. Look at that. Okay. I think we're good. Let's just double check the other one. Yeah, now we're talking. Has it got enough grease on it? Let's say it does. It does. Okay, so we've done that. Excuse the squeaky IKEA chair. It is what it is. Same job on the other side. That's a good coffee. Oh yeah, that's good coffee. Again, thick, consistent grease. This needs to stay here, it must not evaporate, it's not going to do a lot of, the surfaces are not going to move against each other. So grease is when it's dry and clean, and it will stay greased forever. Probably longer than many people are alive. Okay, same for this surface. And the bottom surface, not the top one. Perfect. Perfect. And it should stick right on, like so. I think we're centered. Let's take that. Okay, and that's the job. Good. That's one screw. This is the worst thing about like Chinese is I'm a big fan of like Chinese manufacturing. Chinese manufacturing is now like better than anything we can do for the mass market, right? So we can still manufacture cool bespoke parts. Very, very heavy duty machinery, like some like parts that work in extreme environments. We can do that. But then like if you check like how much a valve costs like that, right? It's like £1,000 for a valve or something like this. So we can manufacture that. Or a vise that's manufactured in the West. You can still buy one made in Germany, but the prices will start at 1,000, right? For a vise of the same size. But I wouldn't say that the Chinese make shit. It's just that sometimes they make these shortcuts where, and I can kind of see why they make them. It's not because they can't make great stuff. It's because they have to work to price. And so they manufacture bolts and they make them sort of, it's like an MVP. Everything's an MVP. But every time you reach an edge case and then you strip these bolts and you're like, oh, for fuck's sake, why do they rock this tiny little Allen key? That was interesting. That didn't go in well. Okay, that's quite deep in. That's okay. No, these are okay. These are good. And just a little bit of extra grease is what you want. Just a tiny bit, and then you remove it, you know that it's all greased up very nicely in there. Very, very nicely. Okay, we don't need this anymore. Screws, all of the screws can go back in. And that's for the other vise. Right. Now we need to grease this part. And again, just enough. You want just enough grease. Okay. I tried to polish this part. You can still see the grooves, but I think I did a good job on this. Okay. And then the opposite side, which I should have done first, actually. Because now I cannot sit it on that rail. Okay. Which one? It's going to be mostly the middle and the front. There we go. I did over lubricate, over grease my other vise. It's not nice to use it when it's all dripping grease, because you're not always greasy when you're using a vise. So you don't want to come out of this game dirty and filthier than you were when you started. Awesome. It's not bad machining, but it's definitely a rough surface. This one on the side. I didn't have time to polish it, but also people do over polish these sides, but what it does, it reduces the geometric tolerances for the overall vise, and this jaw will start to rattle because it will basically, if you polish those sides, right, and these rails, then there'll be more gap between the two parts and it will rattle more. So I would say I would prefer a rougher surface to mirror finish and then like a rattling vise. So you want to be careful there. We're done. All we need to do is remove bits of grease here from the sides, here and there. Why do I put that? It's total yuck now. Okay. Oh, bloody chair. Even I start getting annoyed. Okay. It's getting tricky. I need clean hands. Right. In Russia, there's a saying for when they connect two parts of a vehicle. It's called a marriage or a wedding. And I think that's definitely a wedding. It slides well. I mean, obviously, if you give it a mirror polish. No, it slides much better. Look, I think there's bits of paint in there which I need to work off. Oh yeah. Oh, for fuck's sake. I'll have to redo that. That's okay. That is okay. Right. I don't know how much more I can do right now because the paint is definitely not very set. It's not stable yet. But this would need to go in. Probably the one with a better center. Goes in through there. So if we look at it from the side, this would go in there, through, and in the slots. Yeah, perfect. All the way. Yeah. And then you can put the spindle in. And there we go. And there we go. So what do you think about the color? Is it like a nice machine tool grey, or is it a shitty grey? What do you reckon? Well, I guess that concludes our build for now. I'm sure you'd want to see how the spindle goes in. There's a few bits there which I want to upgrade. Like, for instance, I want to put a thin washer on the front, because this is where the wear happens on the casting. So we want this washer to wear, but also this washer will add 2 more surfaces of grease. So you'll have overall 4 surfaces where things can slide, and it will really ease up the turning of the spindle. So we're going to do that. Basically the spindle goes in and the vise is ready. I would say that concludes our build. You kind of know where we're at and how it works. Record are great vices, and I would highly recommend just getting an old record as opposed to... There we go. There we go. There we go. As opposed to a new, like, whatever brand is for the same money. Just kind of also... This vise, it's got actual labor built into it. Like, it was casted in England. It was people working. People built families doing this work. These things were built for people doing engineering and mechanical work. It's so much more purpose-built, this vise, than anything you can buy today. Today it's cheap, and it's barely ever being used for the intended purpose. It's just like, I believe in these vibes, I believe in intent, I believe in things which were built for a reason, and a vise like this would have been built for a reason. We can see that there's not a whole lot of damage to it, so it probably sat in someone's shed. Back in the day when in England men would build things and fix cars and do a lot of stuff in their sheds and gardens. And I think this is one of these vises, but actually so is the other one. No, actually, that's the other one that I mentioned. And it's exactly the same, and like I said, so the guy used it to make custom motorcycle parts. There's this history to these things. They were built for a purpose, they were used for a reason. And that's why I'm saying that you should probably consider buying older tools. There's nothing wrong about them. Like, for instance, the Bosch driver that I use. I mean, it says heavy duty and professional, but it's far from it, right? It is literally built to price, and it's not a great tool. And a friend of mine just wrote to me, and he sent me pictures of these, like, completely giving up after a couple of years of use. That's not something that I've got pride and joy in owning. Something like this, you've got it on your bench, and it's a purpose-built tool that had a purposeful life. I don't know. I think that's how I should finish. I should finish here. All I want to say is that there's definitely a difference to owning some of the tools. Like, I wouldn't say that owning an old screwdriver is a better option to owning a new screwdriver. I don't think there's some tools which are definitely better made today. Like, you buy a good snap-on screwdriver today, or whatever, Fagcom, whatever. They're so much better than the old stuff. But some of the stuff that doesn't have a purpose anymore, like vices, we use vices today as a third hand. People who work professionally, they do have access to incredibly expensive vices made in the West, or Europe, or Japan, or whatever, which are purpose-built and are great tools. But for majority of us, the stuff that you can go and buy for like $50 to $100 is just like sort of built to price, and you would be so much better off owning something like this. And on this bombshell, we end this restoration. Thank you very much for watching. Bye.